Four-time world champion, one of Formula One's most dominant drivers, and one of the most successful partnerships of the modern era. But now there is a question nobody in Formula One can ignore. Is Max Verstappen about to leave Red Bull? Because for the first time in years, Max's future doesn't look certain. The man who redefined what dominance looks like in modern Formula One suddenly finds himself at the center of a story that has nothing to do with lap times or race strategy. It is a story about loyalty, performance, and the kind of decision that only the very best athletes ever have to make. To understand why this story matters, you have to understand what Max and Red Bull built together. Verstappen joined Red Bull's senior team in 2016, and over the next decade, the partnership transformed Formula One. 4 world championships, race victories, records, and years of dominance that made the rest of the grid look like they were competing in a different sport. From 2021 through 2024, Max became the face of Red Bull's golden era, a period so complete, so overwhelming, that rivals were forced to completely rethink their approach just to stay relevant. But dynasties don't last forever. History has shown that in Formula One, the moment a team stops evolving is the moment the rest of the grid catches up. And that is exactly what began to happen. Then Formula One changed, new regulations arrived, the competitive order shifted, and Red Bull suddenly didn't look unbeatable anymore. Instead of controlling the grid, they were fighting to stay with the front runners. That creates a problem for a driver like Max Verstappen, because Max doesn't need a comfortable seat, he needs a winning car. Current reporting has described Red Bull as struggling to deliver a consistently competitive challengers under the new regulations. The car that once felt like an extension of Verstappen's instincts began showing limitations that no amount of driver skill could fully overcome. For a team that spent years setting the benchmark, this shift wasn't just a technical setback, it was a signal, and Max Verstappen is exactly the kind of driver who reads those signals clearly. Here is where the story gets complicated. Max Verstappen is not simply a free agent. His Red Bull contract runs through the end of 2028, but that doesn't necessarily mean he is locked in. Performance-related exit clauses are widely reported to exist within the deal, and that is why Red Bull's competitiveness matters so much. Because the question isn't simply, does Max have a contract? The real question is, does that contract still give him a reason to stay? Current reporting from Formula One and Sky Sports describes the 2028 contract and the existence of performance-related exit mechanisms. What that means in practical terms is that the contract is not a guarantee, it is a framework. And within that framework, performance is the deciding factor. Not words, not promises, results. Then there is Max himself. He has repeatedly made one thing clear through his comments and actions: winning matters. In recent months, Verstappen has spoken about working with Red Bull on improving performance for this season and future seasons. But he has stopped short of confirming his long-term future. That ambiguity is the story. Not a confirmed exit, not a confirmed stay. Just uncertainty. And in Formula One, uncertainty at this level doesn't stay quiet for long. It spreads through the paddock, through team boardrooms, through driver management meetings. Every team principal in the sport is watching the same situation unfold. Because if Max Verstappen becomes available, even theoretically, the entire driver market changes overnight. And then there is Mercedes. Mercedes has become one of the teams most frequently linked with Verstappen in recent reporting. A team with the infrastructure, the budget, and the ambition to challenge for championships under the new regulations. But a move wouldn't be simple. George Russell is there, Kimi Antonelli is emerging as one of the sport's most exciting young drivers. So where would Max fit? And what happens to the rest of the grid if he arrives? These are not small questions. A Verstappen arrival at Mercedes would force decisions that ripple far beyond one team. It is important to be clear here. This remains speculation. No confirmed move has been reported, but the logic of why Mercedes would want him is not difficult to follow. They have the car, they have the resources, and they have a history of building around the very best. But Mercedes isn't the only possibility. Then there is McLaren, Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, two drivers already competing at the front of the grid with genuine championship ambitions. Now imagine adding Max Verstappen to that picture. That wouldn't just change McLaren, it could completely reshape the Formula One driver market. Current reporting has also linked Verstappen with McLaren as part of the wider 2027 driver market speculation. The idea of three elite drivers at one team creates an immediate question about who stays and who moves. Norris has built McLaren into a title contender. Piastri has established himself as a future champion in waiting. The arrival of Verstappen would force a conversation that nobody at McLaren is publicly ready to have. But privately, the possibility exists. And in Formula One, possibilities have a way of becoming realities faster than anyone expects. But here is the question that gets lost in all the rumors. Why would Max actually leave? Red Bull knows him. They built the team around him. Max knows the engineers, the culture, the car, the people. Leaving would mean starting again, learning a new technical philosophy, building new relationships, adapting to a different environment at the peak of his career. So Red Bull doesn't necessarily need to convince Max with promises. They need to convince him with performance. That is the fundamental reality beneath all the speculation. Every conversation about Mercedes and McLaren ultimately comes back to the same point. If Red Bull can give Max a car capable of winning championships, the conversation ends. The challenge is that under the current regulations, delivering that car is not a simple task, and time is not standing still. That is why the next few months could be so important. Mercedes has a reason to want him. McLaren has a reason to consider him, and Red Bull has every reason to keep him. But Max has the most important decision of all. Three of the most powerful teams in Formula One are now connected to the same name. And at the center of all of it stands one driver who has already proven everything he needs to prove at Red Bull. The battle for Max Verstappen isn't just a transfer story, it is a defining moment for the direction of Formula One itself. Whoever secures his future secures an enormous competitive advantage. And whoever loses him faces a very different kind of challenge going forward. So is Max Verstappen leaving Red Bull? Right now, nobody can honestly say. The contract exists, the reported exit clauses exist, the speculation exists, and the uncertainty exists. But what is clear is this. If Max moves, it won't just change his career. It could change the entire Formula One grid. Teams would restructure, driver lineups would shift, championship calculations would be rewritten. The next move might belong to Red Bull. Because ultimately, the most powerful argument for Max staying is the one Red Bull makes on track, not in a boardroom. The decision hasn't been made, but the clock is ticking. And somewhere in the Formula One paddock, the most consequential question of the current era is waiting for an answer that only one person can give.